Hey guys, I'm Emily Chen-Newton, and you are listening to the Adaptive Climbing Podcast series, Everybody Climbs. This is a collaborative podcast, which is why I'm here on your Power Company podcast feed. Big thanks to Chris Hampton for welcoming us to his platform for a while. All right, this is a personal one. Our guest today, Fallon Rowe, is a climbing coach who I've worked with over the years to deal with a genetic collagen disorder that she and I share. In her words, her coaching helps climbers optimize their experience using mindset and mental performance techniques, like working on fear of falling and analyzing movement and technique with video feedback and visualization. She also has a condition called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which you'll hear mentioned in this episode. It's basically a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system, so things that should be automatic in the body go haywire. She says her body doesn't properly regulate things like blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature. Her main symptom is pre-syncope, or that lightheaded feeling before you faint. Now, while we both discuss our medical conditions in this episode and how we've learned to live with them, this content does not replace and is not medical advice. Now, with that said, Fallon has been climbing since 2003, all over the world, I might add, and coaching since 2013. She started with indoor comps, but her true passion is for outdoor climbing, both sport and trad. She's always had a strong connection to nature and deepened that connection by getting her degree in geology. She's also a rock climbing guide and teaches courses in trad and anchor building. She's sponsored by the Desert Rat, Cypher Climbing, Hilks Eyewear, and Crux Power. And she loves to play the fiddle, shoot pool, wander in the desert, and photograph climbing when she's not climbing herself. We start out this episode with Fallon talking about a time when she was digging into some of these non-climbing hobbies because she was dealing with a tendon tweak. But, as she tells us, this injury hit differently than others in the past. In a good way. Let's listen.
I've been climbing for 21 years, and over that period of time, I've had a number of injuries, mostly related to overuse, not very many that were like traumatic or acute injuries. And I realized in adulthood that these injuries were due to a condition that I have, which is the one you have too, we found out, which is HEDS, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it is a connective tissue disorder that affects all of the collagen in your body. So it makes joints, ligaments, tendons, skin, all of these things more susceptible to things like injuries and tears, dislocations, strains, sprains, and so on. So recently I was climbing at my highest level. I was out cragging with a friend, and I was actually third day on, which was my first problem. Normally I don't climb multiple days on because of this condition. It can take longer for me to recover than peers, I've noticed, because those tissues really need extra time to repair themselves. So I was third day on because I had done like a personal day of climbing, and then I am a guide. And so I had done a day of guiding, and I was like, well, the guiding day was like fairly light compared to my normal climbing. So I'll just do another personal day of climbing after that. And I think my tendons were a little bit too stressed because I was on this route and I was like flashing and I was super excited. I was one bolt from the top. So I was trying really hard. I was super pumped, and I felt a twang in my forearm, which unfortunately was a familiar twang. I have had a few grade 2 and grade 1 strains of flexor tendons in my forearms over the years, and I knew it was exactly that. So I immediately fell as soon as it happened and was like, lower me to the ground. I can't climb anymore today. It's in my forearm. So it's when one of those fingers that's attached to that tendon is engaged, it will hurt, but not in my hand or finger. It'll hurt way deep in my forearm. So yeah, my flexor tendon in my forearm was strained, and I was bummed. So in the past, like in high school, so about, 12-ish years ago, when I started to have some of my first flexor tendon tears, I would take 8 weeks off because I'd see a physical therapist that knew nothing about climbing, and they'd say, okay, you need 8 weeks to heal that tendon. Don't use it at all. And then I would baby it when I would come back to climbing and only use jugs. And it would take months for me to feel like I could use a pocket or like a crimp again, right? And so this time I am trying to rehab it with a different method, and it's actually pretty much done now, which is exciting. It's been long enough. It's feeling great now. And I feel like more of the modern physical therapists I follow and talk to and see for treatment have been subscribing to a method that's a little bit less like, okay, just take 8 weeks off, and more like, okay, you should be using it a little bit to get some blood flowing to the area and, getting it to heal so that it doesn't get super weak and stiff or whatever. So using it and loading it appropriately just to get blood flow and encourage healing. So I've been doing that instead this time around, and it has healed so much faster. I think it's only been about a month. And this week I finally went back to 100%, trying at my limit on sport climbs, pulling on hard crimps, doing some hangboard type of workouts. And it felt great. I don't have pain anymore, and my finger and forearm feel fine. So that's actually been really fun to change the strategy and see positive results. So yay.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there. So I guess the first thing that I think of is your response and your demeanor. You are so engaged and ready to learn with your body and treat it like an experiment. Let's try this thing. And isn't this fun how we're watching ourselves? But I know that it is not always fun. Living.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately.
Living with a body that is unpredictable, which is something that a lot of adaptive and a lot of para climbers, I mean, to some level, everybody lives with that, right? But I feel like for adaptive and para athletes, there's this level of unpredictability that can really keep you on your toes in a not so fun way. Sometimes of when is my body going to fail? Who knows?
Exactly.
So how have you dealt with that over the years to get to this point to where you're treating it like a fun after-school science experiment?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I am a scientist by training, as you know. So
right. Saying that, knowing your background.
Yeah. I'm very much someone who tries to follow as much evidence-based strategies as possible, read the research and try to just adapt over time to what is best practice, basically. And yeah, I've realized over the years with that uncertainty that comes with having this condition, it is really hard if you're constantly worrying about these little injuries that come and go, or beating yourself up about them, or getting too attached to the outcome of, okay, do I think this is going to take, a week to heal, 2 months, a year, however long, you never really know. And so I've had to get to a point where I can accept that uncertainty and just realize, all right, I'll just do the best I can each day with what I've got and what my body is telling me, and I'll just proceed accordingly. And so, yeah, I've tried really hard to just listen to my body's cues and push it the right amount, which takes a lot of trial and error. Everybody's going to be different. I've been climbing a really long time, and so my tendons have had a lot of time to adapt and strengthen, but I still have HEDS, so they're still susceptible to these problems. So the way that I treat it might look a little different than it would for someone who isn't an adaptive climber. So yeah, I've just had to have a lot of self-compassion and mindfulness to be aware of these things and be kind to myself and give my body the time it needs to heal, because I love climbing and I want to be able to climb forever. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to heal. Yeah.
So I want to ask you to go a little bit more specific on some of those things, but also I do want to clear up for listeners, because I know that if you've listened to other episodes, you've probably heard me talk about this connective tissue disorder that I have, or this collagen disorder, but I don't know if I've ever named it in any of the episodes. So you're saying here, Fallon, it's called HEDS, or that stands for hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Quite a mouthful, named after whoever, the guys who discovered it. Not terribly descriptive as far as the name goes, but yeah, it affects your tendons and ligaments. The collagen, basically, it's not cross-linked properly. Those are some of the words that you could Google if you wanted to look up more about this condition. But practically what it means for us is that everything's just a little bit looser than it should be, which is not always a good thing. Flexibility is helpful in climbing, but not always to this extent. So with that in mind, can you go into and get a little bit more specific? Maybe there are instances that you remember really practicing that compassion that you just mentioned, that you've learned to employ with yourself and your body over the years.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the biggest things that stands out is when I broke my ankle 7 years ago. I was bouldering and a hold broke and I hit the ground and broke a lot of bones in my foot and ankle and tore all the ligaments and tendons in it. And that would have happened, regardless of having this condition or not. But it was really traumatic. And it also made me realize, wow, I really can't have all my eggs in one basket with climbing, because I couldn't climb for quite a while. And so it kind of made me wake up to that reality and think, okay, I need to have other things in my life that bring me joy and are engaging, that are outside of climbing. And I need to be kind to myself and let myself heal, because I am the caretaker of my body. I need to make sure I'm giving it what it needs in terms of sleep, fuel, physical therapy, taping, whatever it might be. So I remember that instance very specifically. The ankle break was a big one where I really had to start learning that. And then over the years since then, I've just had to realize every time I tweak my shoulder or my wrist, those two are the biggest ones for me that are kind of on a rotation of being tweaked to some level almost all the time. It's always something, especially with the shoulders. I mean, being an overhead athlete like climbing, everybody's shoulders are really at risk. And with our condition in particular, the shoulders are just a nightmare sometimes. And so I have to be pretty diligent with the PT. But, sometimes things get busy and I drop the ball and then I beat myself up about it. Because I'm like, man, if I had been doing my PT, maybe I wouldn't have had this. But that's not very helpful, So I try to be compassionate to myself with that. Like, I'm just doing the best I can. I'll try to be better and stay on my routine and keep strengthening it. And really just be aware when I'm climbing of where my shoulder is in space and what range of motion I'm using and things like that. So, so just over the years, every time I get a tweak, I just have to give myself some compassion and also just hope that the people around me are understanding, because with this condition and all of the little injuries that it can cause, you often have to change plans or bail on people. And I hate being flaky. So I hate having to be like, hey, I can't go out this weekend to climb after all. Like, I'm injured. If I can still belay, I'll try to at least like show up and belay if it's like a cragging kind of day. But it just really depends. So it's helpful, I think, for people around you to understand it too, so that they know it's not just something you're doing wrong. It's just the body that you're dealing with.
That's a really good point you bring up about it's not just this relationship with you and your own body, but it's the relationship with other people around you. And that can bring stress.
Yeah.
And I guess we should say, for people who don't know much about this condition, it does fall into the category of an invisible disability. So we do have to like out ourselves in a way to say it, because people wouldn't assume that you might have this lingering thing that is affecting the way you climb. You just can't see it.
Right. Yeah. They might see some of the outward traces of like, if you tape your joint or something like that, but it's pretty hard to tell. And that can be hard too, because people might say, oh, well, have you just tried doing this beta or something? And you're like, actually, if I do that, I'm going to like rip something in my shoulder or whatever. Sometimes you just have to put your foot down a little bit and be like, thanks, but no thanks. That's not going to work for me.
It's like a clinical reason I'm not going to dyno. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Or in certain kinds of moves. Yeah. It's different for everybody, I am, I think, a rare case with HEDS where I don't really have finger problems, whereas a lot of people with it do, but I have more issues, like I said, more of like my shoulders, wrists, hips, stuff like that. So it's just a little different for everyone, and like where you've had stress and where I've been climbing my whole life. Like I said, my tendons in my forearms and fingers have had a chance to get pretty dang strong. So it takes a lot now to hurt them. Like this recent flexor tendon injury was my first time hurting it in I think 7 or 8 years. So that was pretty good. I had a good run for a while without a forearm or finger injury. So yeah.
I mean, I was actually passed over for this diagnosis a couple of times, because the standard in the doctor's office little check that they do, as I'm sure you know, includes like looking at the hypermobility of your elbows and your fingers and your thumb. And I had been climbing for so long, like my fingers are not super hypermobile. They're not the most hypermobile thing on my body. And so I remember them doing this, and they'd be like, nope, you're fine. You don't check that box, basically. And then when I went to a specialist, I still remember he had a fellow in his room who was in training, and he looked at this young doctor who was training under him, and he said, you need to remember this. This young woman, I was in my mid-20s at this point, 26, and he said, this young woman was passed over and was not diagnosed and has continued to live with all these symptoms without a diagnosis because whoever saw her before didn't listen to her patient history. Whoever saw, it was a remarkable, but he like really drove it home to this person training underneath him. He was like, whoever saw her before did not pay attention to the fact that she was a rock climber and her fingers are not going to be hypermobile. And like that should not have, right? I was like, yes.
I can relate to that. On my Baton score, like this test where they look for hypermobility, I passed like all of them with, hypermobile joints except for the pinkies, because my hands are kind of in like a perma crimp position. Like when I go to high five people, my pinky is like bent down, like it's crimping. And so, because I've been climbing for so long, but every other joint, it's very obvious. And so, I really like that you brought that up, because it's so true. You have to have really good providers that know what to look for and how to listen and help you out. That's tough.
Yeah. But finding those people is amazing and so important. I have a PT right now that I can go to her if I think I've injured something, and she'll basically like run me through a battery of tests for that particular ligament or joint. And she'll be like, nope, you're fine. It's just pain. Like, it's just muscle, you're fine. Give it 5 days. Or she's like, the
one you don't want to hear. But it's so nice to have that reassurance, that expert opinion. Because as you mentioned, like with HDDS, you don't really know how long it's going to take, and you're just in pain all the time, and it's very elusive. It's moving around, and it can be so hard to sort through those signals and think, we've talked about this before, trying to think about, is this actually an injury? Is my body structurally damaged? Or am I just getting this weird pain signal and it's going to be fleeting and gone? But we don't really know, because pain is the only way our body knows how to talk to us when something is wrong like that. And so it can be so confusing. I've been listening to some podcasts and reading some books about pain recently, and it's been so fascinating to learn more about how our brain interprets it and how we can try to change that. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way like a baby only knows how to cry, and what we make of it's a combination of so many different factors, right? And I feel like you are a little bit further along on this journey, Fallon, than I am. I am a little bit less at peace with my body.
That's okay. We all start somewhere.
Yeah. I'm still at this point when people are like, you need to, listen to your body. And I'm like, no, my body fucking lies. I don't want to trust her.
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I've been an athlete for so long. I'm pretty good about it now, and I try not to catastrophize. That's the biggest thing for me, is not jumping to conclusions and being like, oh, I'm out for 8 weeks. Like at the moment it happens, I can just now kind of step back and be like, okay, this is what my body's telling me. Here's the objective facts I have before me. This is what was happening. This is what I can see or feel. Let's just move forward from here, and I'll do my best. And often, it just takes a few days. Like your PT said, give it 5 days and you're good. And so, that's been really helpful for me to just kind of talk myself down, be like, it's okay. And even if it wasn't okay, like sometimes you do have to take more time off. I've got so many other cool things going on in my life now that having to take a break from climbing is not the big, scary, looming thing it used to be when I was younger. So that's really relieving, because actually I'm having ankle surgery in 2 months, my 4th ankle surgery, as a result of that bouldering fall. And, am I dreading it? A little bit, of course. It's not fun to have surgery. It sucks. But I'm also like, okay, well, it's an opportunity to do lots of other things, and I'll stay strong throughout my recovery. And when I'm all healed up, it'll be fine. But when I was younger, that would have sent me into like a tailspin. So it does take time, but it gets easier.
I'm glad you came back to that, because you mentioned that earlier, and that did seem like a major part of you maturing with yourself as a human in a body,
right.
Learning that you're more than just climbing, and that you have these other things that you can fall back on if climbing is just not in the cards for X number of weeks or months.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important for everybody, even if whether they're adaptive or a paraclimber or not, everybody can get hurt. Everyone has life things that come up. And if climbing is your only escape, your only source of some kind of beneficial emotion, then you're relying on that pretty heavily. I still have climbing as my primary activity and source of joy and all of these things. But yeah, having a little bit of diversity built into my life has been super helpful.
Well, and we should say here, and I'm sure that listeners can probably hear it in our dynamic, but Fallon and I know each other pretty well. And I originally came to you to get coaching because, and I really feel like you have been so special to me on this journey of finding out that, first of all, that adaptive climbing exists and that it's like a pretty big deal worldwide. It's not just like a small cohort of people. It's an entire global community. And you were like one of those first people. You know how sometimes you have people in life that are like, they hold the door open, the metaphorical door open for this like whole new world that you find. And I feel like you were like one of those door holders.
Oh my gosh, that is so sweet. Thank you for saying that. That is one of my goals with my platform. So I am really glad to hear that. That's actually really cool. I didn't know that.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, so I was on some like late night Google rabbit hole searching for I was like, I just had this thought. I was like, people with my condition have got to be rock climbers around I can't be the only one who's realized, right? I'm not that smart. Yeah. I'm not that special. I can't be the only one who's realized that climbing is like actually really good physical therapy for this connective tissue disorder. So I was Googling and then I found, actually it was an Instagram account, which I will give them a shout out to. It's at EDS Rock Climbers Instagram. And I think it's EDS_climbers.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. EDS_climbers. And I was like, holy shit, this is so cool. Like there's an entire community of people who climb not in spite of this condition, but some of them because it actually makes it better and more manageable for the rest of life. And one of the managers of that account, when I sent them a message, they were like, you should reach out to Fallon. She's in the United States and she does coaching and she's really great. And then that's how I found you.
That's such a nice referral. That's so great to hear. I'll have to thank them for sending you my way. I'm so glad we were able to connect and that they connected us. That's amazing. I didn't actually know the origin story of that.
Yes.
That's cool.
And I think it's kind of, it's really full circle to be talking to you here. And for listeners, just to note that like you're hearing two women on two different like points in their journey with this condition, and that I have actually received coaching from Fallon at one point, and you can hear how your perspective and your relationship with your body and relationship to injury is different from mine and where I'm at. And in a lot of ways, I would love to be where you are at some point to have that perspective on things. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm hell of a lot closer than I used to be.
You are. And I just want to say you're being humble. You've made so much progress and you have such a good attitude about it. And the biggest thing is like you're committed to being aware of it and trying to make strides with it. And that's honestly sometimes the hardest part. So just the fact that you've set foot on that path is amazing. And I'm really proud of you. And I'm excited to see where you keep going with climbing and just in general, like as an active person with this condition, right. Just being able to be kinder to yourself and take that time to slow down and feel okay about things when something goes awry, because it's not always the easiest thing to be okay with that and be able to sit with that. So you're doing well. I really do respect it. I think it's awesome.
I don't know where this quote comes from, but I'm sure most people have heard it, that there's no reason to suffer twice. You know, the idea that like, don't lay in bed at night thinking about you might have fucked up your ankle. If you fucked it up, like it'll be there tomorrow morning. You don't need to lay in bed and think about it right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
If
point.
It's really injured, you'll know.
Yeah, I'm so glad you found that quote though, because it is really hard for people to kind of come to terms with that, with the anxiety that comes with it. And so you have to find what works for you. And if that's what works for you to talk yourself down, then that's awesome. I think everyone needs to have those little quick one-liners or whatever, those easy reminders to help themselves kind of stay grounded when it comes to this kind of thing. And that like I said, that's the case for anybody in climbing, not just adaptive climbers, because climbing is an all-body sport. We're falling, we're doing intense things, weird movements all the time, novel kinds of things. And so, yeah, I think everybody to an extent will struggle with that at some point in their climbing. And it is a helpful reminder.
Do you have any of these phrases or tactics or practices that you do if you find yourself like at the beginning of a spiral?
Yeah, I actually have a note on my phone, and it's this is kind of vulnerable, but it's titled Reassuring Thoughts for Anxiety. And I don't have to look at it very often anymore, but when I do feel anxious about something, I have like little sections in there depending on what I'm anxious about. And there's definitely a couple things like for injury. It's like, it's going to be okay. Like you've been hurt before and you've gotten stronger. You always come back stronger. It's all good. It's just a way to learn. You do your best, you learn from it and move forward. You know, you can only move forward, not backward. And those kinds of things have been helpful for me.
I also love how scientific that is. Like, you have categories and you have lists.
I'm so type A, I know, it's a problem.
Meanwhile, I'm laying in my bed like, girl, if it's fucked, it's fucked. Like, you don't need...
I mean, there's definitely some of that too. I'm like, fuck it, we ball, it's all good. I'm just gonna do my best and go out and have fun anyway. It's fun. My friends know that about me. I'm just always like perma stoked all the time. I just want to climb. And so, yeah, it's hard when something like gets in the way of that, but it also doesn't really like dampen my stoke at all. I'm like, well, I'll still come out and belay, or I'll come take climbing photos. Like, it's all good. Like, I just want to be involved, you know? So it's kind of fun.
Were there certain things that you have learned? Are there certain things that you have learned over the years not related to this fear of injury or reoccurrence of injury, but just other specific things about working with your body type in terms of climbing or other physical activities that you felt like you were kind of like hacking your system to be like, ooh, okay, I'm going to do it this way. It may not be the way that other people do it, but here's my way.
Yeah, I like that you asked that. Well, I also have a condition called POTS. And so just treating that and being able to manage that effectively has been really revolutionary for my climbing. I've done all my best or hardest climbing since I got treatment for my POTS, which has been fantastic. So some of the biggest things I do for that are just drinking a ton of water with electrolytes in it. I have to have an absurd amount of sodium every day to be functional. So that's a big one. And then sleep is another one for sure. And everybody knows that as an athlete, sleep is so critical. But for me, like, I came from a very academically driven and athletically driven background where I was staying very busy and I wasn't always prioritizing sleep when I was younger. And it makes my condition, all of my conditions actually, a lot worse when I'm not sleeping enough. And so really dialing in sleep and making that a priority has been crucial. And then in addition to that, I'd say fueling is probably the biggest one for me. And I guess just like, I don't know if we need to do like a content warning because sometimes food intake is triggering for people. But when I was younger, so I started climbing in the early 2000s. And when I was younger, especially, the culture in climbing, it was starting to improve, but it was still definitely of the mind of like lighter is better. And there was a lot of food restriction happening still in the community. And there still is, but it's become more of a big, global conversation in climbing. And a lot of great coaches and role models now advocate for, hey, like, we're athletes. We need to be fueling like it. We need to be eating enough and all of that. And so when I was younger, I definitely wasn't eating enough and my climbing suffered for it. I was probably a little bit underweight and just really tired all the time. I didn't have the energy. And once I stopped restricting or counting calories or weighing myself, any of those things, once all of that stopped, I just decided one day, I was like, I'm going to just try intuitive eating. Screw it, right? What I'm doing right now is not working, clearly. And so I was like, I'm just going to try intuitive eating. I'm going to eat as much as I want, whenever I want, and I won't restrict anything. I won't restrict sweets. I won't restrict what time I eat or what it is. I will just eat whatever sounds good. And did that mean I ate a lot of gluten-free Oreos? Yes. But it also meant that I was eating enough of other things. And I eventually got to a point in my diet where I felt like I was free. Finally, I was like, I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'm not gaining weight. I'm still climbing and I'm climbing way better. I feel better. I have more energy. Everything in my body improved so much once I just started letting myself actually really eat a lot and whatever I wanted. And that's been really revolutionary for me. So in terms of, I think you asked about hacking my body, just eating a bunch has helped. And I follow a bunch of climbing nutritionists and pages like that. And so I try to follow some of their advice for the timing of the fuel and, the composition in terms of the breakdown of macronutrients and stuff. But I'm not really careful about it. I just kind of listen to my body in that sense. And it's been so much better since I started doing that. And I started doing that about 4 years ago, I think, maybe 5 years ago now. So yeah, it's been awesome. So if you are feeling tired all the time, maybe try eating more. It's pretty great. I have energy. I can credit gluten-free Oreos with many of my hardest sins. So,
I definitely get more achy and kind of what I refer to as the sometimes I call it fake news when
You're like, shut up, pain. This is fake news. That's so funny.
Yeah, exactly. There are signals that I know. I'm like, there's no way that's an injury. And I tell my body, I'm like, no, it's fake news. Stop it. And I definitely get more of the fake news pain if I am low blood sugar. And I'll get it where I don't, like, my stomach's not grumbling, but like you kind of feel it more in your head, you know, and you're like, woo, I need to eat something. And I will, just something like fruit gummies, or if I have an orange with me, just something like that. And then like wiggle my fingers and they don't hurt nearly as much. I don't know what that is. I do not know the science behind it, but I know that it helps.
That's good. Yeah. And with a condition like this, I feel like there's still so much research that needs to be done. And we just have to try to figure out our own bodies for ourselves, which can be challenging, but with time it definitely gets easier. I've noticed that protein intake is one of the biggest ones. That's kind of the only real thing I focus on. Like I eat intuitively, but the real only like specific thing I focus on my diet is just getting enough protein. That's like the only stipulation I have within my intuitive eating. So, and I have noticed when I lax on that, like when I'm traveling or something, I do feel a lot worse. And I think it's just because, especially with HDDS, our body is trying to rebuild these tissues. And if it doesn't have any of the building blocks available, you know, like protein, it's going to be especially hard for someone like us to rebuild. So,
and I agree on that. It definitely takes me longer to recover from climbing or even a workout, and I will get cramps. Like I'm still trying to figure out how to make some of these crazy leg cramps stop.
I feel that with some of my little shoulder stabilizer muscles. I'm like, ow, like right now, like I climbed an American fork yesterday and I'm like, why is my shoulder so sore in this weird spot? Like, what did I even do? Like, got to keep up the PT all the time. But yeah.
My current tactic is just lots of the little like in and out machine, the adductor and abductor machine. I think that's because I've tried all the other, like the electrolytes and stuff, and I think that did help, but it's still a problem. So I think, I mean, and a lot of times with HEDS, it comes back to like, well, the tendon ain't doing its job, so you got to make the muscle do it.
Right. Absolutely.
So I just got to get stronger.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear back, like if you're consistent with that and it helps, you know, I'd love to see what the result is. It's the scientific part of me is like, okay, we have a trial going. Let's see what the data is afterwards.
Okay, I'll let you know in about a month how's it going. But speaking of that, of like checking in with you, I'm sure I am not the only person that you like keep tabs on, that you've coached or you're coaching consistently or maybe more sporadically. How does that feel for you to know that you have had an influence on so many other climbers?
Oh, wow. That's really kind. It honestly feels awesome. It's really great. For the longest time, I felt very alone in my climbing because similar to you when you were talking about, okay, I should Google this. I can't be the only one, kind of thing. When I was first starting to struggle with some of these medical things, in particular in my climbing, I felt very alone. I couldn't really find like a role model or a pro climber who had these conditions, and I couldn't find any tips about them. And I was like, what the heck? Like, this is so frustrating. And so I was like, well, I guess if I can't find it, I need to like become it, and I need to figure it out and like put the info out there. And so it's taken years, but I figured out a lot of tips, and I've published articles, and I do things like this, going on podcasts, and I coach, and I just try to like put it out in the world so that other people like don't feel alone like I did, and they can know, oh wow, like here's somebody else who has this, who's still climbing and pushing it, not just necessarily like climbing at like a recreational level, but like sponsored and like trying hard. That's not going to be the goal for everyone, but just to see that it's possible, I think that would have been helpful for me when I was younger. So that's whenever I'm putting things out there, whether it's coaching or in social media, I'm always thinking like, what would younger me would have wanted to see? Like what did I need to hear back then? Like someone like you were saying earlier, like, oh, I'm earlier in my journey. I'm like, okay, who is my audience and what do I want to convey to them? And so being able to do that is really rewarding. Like you asked how it feels to have that kind of impact. And it honestly is like, it overwhelms me with gratitude all the time. And my friends get so sick of it. Like I cry with gratitude all the time because I'm like, wow, my life is so much better than I thought it was going to be. When I was in like the depths of my illness, like undiagnosed, untreated, really struggling, I didn't really see a way out, and I didn't know if I would really get my life back. And now that I have it back and I get to help other people, that's just, it's incredible. So it really motivates me. It energizes me. It makes me want to keep doing what I'm doing. And I just get so many nice messages from people. I like honestly don't even know how to respond sometimes because I'm just like, wow, like, thank you for sharing this with me. I'm so glad that we could connect, whether it's just like they read an article I wrote or I actually got to coach them. however it is that I've impacted someone, it's really just great to hear that feedback, and I just makes me want to keep doing it. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, and then relatedly, as a person that exists in that world of social media, I only know you on Instagram. I don't know if you're on any of the other ones. Okay.
Nope, just Instagram. I was like, I gotta keep it simple. I'm too old. I'm not doing TikTok. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, I just have Instagram.
That seems like a wise choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But being as someone in that world, what is your perspective on how social media is changing? Either speak to whichever one you want, how it's changing the adaptive climbing community or the global climbing community more broadly. But how do you feel that social media is influencing those communities that otherwise it used to be like everything you had to be in person, right? To like pass that information on in an outdoor setting. And now so much of it is online. How do you think that is changing our communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really increasing accessibility and just community itself as a feeling, because when you can connect with so many other people who have the same condition as you, it's really uplifting and empowering. You know, in your local community, like in person, you might not really have anybody else that can relate. But if you open it up via social media to the whole country or world, then suddenly you have hundreds of people or even thousands that you can connect with and relate to and discuss these topics and feel this sense of belonging, which is really powerful. So it's been great for me, like the EDS Climbers Instagram and other people that I've met just like through the app. It's been really helpful to be able to talk with them, and even just talking with you, like coaching with you, it helps me too. It's really helpful to like see what other people are trying and report back, and we can just kind of problem solve together, which I think is great. Like if we don't have as much research on our condition as other people might, then what better way than to, you know, connect with other people who have it and put our heads together and see what we can figure out. And especially in a niche sport like climbing, where there used to be really limited info, and now we're trying to work to change that. So I think that social media, I always tell people, you know, it can be a really positive thing in your life or a really negative thing in your life, depending on how you use it. For me, it used to be more of a negative. And I would get really caught up in like the statistics of it, like, oh, I didn't get enough likes and when I was younger, and it was like really shallow and stupid. And now I'm like, I don't care about any of that, because any message I get from people that tells me that I helped them or inspired them or they related to me, that is what keeps me going. I don't care about the numbers so much as the real people behind it, you know, the community that it builds. And so I think the more people that are using social media for good and to connect in these ways, the better the experience is going to be for everybody involved. You know, it's going to be more positive and empowering, which is super cool. And it's just nice too, because then like you have friends all over. So if you travel to go climbing now, it's like eventually when I go to the Red, I can hit you up and I'll be like, yeah, Emily, let's go climb. Like that would be so awesome.
Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think social media really can be used as a force for good if we go into it with that intention. And I'm all about intention, as you know, in my coaching. Intention is everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, because the point that you bring up about, you know, you may feel alone just in the community of people that you have physical access to, but worldwide, if you have digital or virtual access to people, the community becomes a lot bigger and you become a lot less rare. And I was just going to Google, do you know the current number that they say, like how common it is, one, and how many people have HEDS?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Hold on. I have a computer. Let me see what it says. I think, okay, this is according to the Ehlers-Danlos Society website. It says the overall prevalence of EDS, not just the hypermobile type, is cited as 1 in 5,000. So there you go. 1 in 5,000 have just any kind of EDS.
And hypermobile is the most common out of all the subtypes. But yeah, if you're looking at a climbing community, you know, of a couple hundred people, depending on the size of your town or city, the likelihood another one in your physical community has the same condition is fairly uncommon. It's, you know, it's a low probability. So yeah, the global community via social media is so helpful for that. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. A lot of the people I've connected with are in the UK. It seems like they have a really great, thriving EDS community there. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know why that is, but yes, the same. I've also found that. And then that's where they seem to have like actual, not just adaptive climbing meetup nights, but I will see things for like an EDS climbing night, and they have enough people that they make up a whole night of climbing at their gym.
That's like dreamy. A girl can dream, right?
Right. I would love to be able to like combine all of our different like things that you found that work on the wall or fueling or just different how to hack yourself kind of techniques that if we could all combine those. Do you have some that are just that you could like rattle off the top of your head of things that you've either hacked or are hacking?
Definitely. Yeah. I wrote an article recently actually about climbing with HEDS, specifically with all of my tips. So if you want the full rundown of every little thing, you can read that. But some of the biggest ones, some of the biggest ones are sleeping enough, eating enough, staying hydrated. Of course, those are important for health overall. But then more specifically, just trying to keep the joints in their safe ranges and not pushing it. Like when it's fully extended, that's a little bit of a weaker position. And so really trying to keep everything engaged and just being aware of my body in space, proprioception, right? Just seeing like, okay, what is my leg doing? What is my arm doing? Where am I going from here? Is that going to put me in a compromised position? That can be a lot of mental load when you're already climbing, but it gets easier with time to adapt to that and just be able to know, okay, I'm in an all right spot right here. But if I do this rose move, my shoulder's not going to be happy, right? And every climber knows that to an extent, but I think we just have to be a little more aware of it to prevent injury. So keeping joints in their stable ranges is great. And then if something is actively hurting or I'm recovering from something, then taping it appropriately or putting a brace on it, if possible, is helpful just to give it that bit of extra support and stability. Because, when everything is hypermobile, it causes so much instability. So keeping up on the physical therapy and then, wearing braces or taping is super helpful. And then I do a lot of scraping, like cupping and scraping, like the body work kind of stuff. Like,
oh yeah, like massage with a spatula, basically.
I use a wave tool, and I know we've talked before about how like really deep massage can be counterproductive. Like it can cause problems because it makes things like too loose or it damages the tissues too much. So there's a like law of diminishing marginal returns, right? It's like, okay, to an extent, the massage and the scraping and stuff can be helpful, but if you overdo it, it's bad, especially with HEDS. So, to an extent, I really enjoy the scraping. I think that has been instrumental for me and just like encouraging blood flow and just kind of getting like scar tissue broken up a little bit and getting things moving the way that they're supposed to. It's been really therapeutic for me. And it feels like, okay, I have something I can actually be doing to help this. I'm not just sitting here waiting for it to get better. I can sit there and be like, okay, I'm going to use my wave tool and spend a few minutes just giving this area some attention and help it heal a little bit better. So that's actually been really helpful to me. Is the scraping.
Yeah, I've done some of that with foot pain that I've had. And then it helps with my ankles as well, because obviously that tendon that runs down your Achilles down into your foot. It's like it's all damn connected or something.
Right. I know. I was at the PT last week for hip pain that was new and different. And she said it was because my lat was too tight, which was so interesting. I wouldn't have figured that out, but it took her and like her assistant a long time to kind of sort through it and test all these different things. They're like, yeah, your QL is really tight, your lat's really tight, try these stretches and now try that motion, and the pain was gone. And I was like, what? You guys are wizards. This is wild. Like, how did you figure out this is connected and one thing being too tight is pulling on something else? Because like you said, the muscles try to make up for what the tendons and ligaments can't do. And so sometimes, it can cause these like weird muscle tight knot imbalance kinds of things to happen. It's not fun.
Totally. And that's like the other thing that I have to remind myself. If I feel something that I think is an injury, it might very well be tightness from a muscle that is seemingly far away from where I'm feeling it, but something got tight and it's pulling on this other thing. And then my brain thinks that I'm injured. And I just have to like walk myself back a couple steps and be like, no, you're fine.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something I really only like internalized very recently, because before I was just like, okay, HEDS means everything is too loose, too unstable, and it didn't really occur to me like, oh, well, it actually might be causing some more tightness. Like I knew that on some level, but more recently it's really hit home for me and become more internalized, I guess is the only way to put it. Like I get it now. I see it now.
Well, so we may not have enough people to have our own climbing night here anywhere in the U.S. Jealous of everyone, all y'all in the U.K. But like to the point that we were talking about just a while ago, like this is what the online community is great for. So if anybody is listening, you can reach out on the Instagram for this show, Everybody Climbs. The Instagram handle is Every BD Climbs. So the letters BD, Every BD Climbs. That is the handle. And if there are other things that you've thought of, if you are also extra stretchy, things that have helped you on the wall. Because that is what's so great about the online community that we have access to these days.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions or to talk things over with people. And I'm just so glad I've gotten to connect with you, Emily, over the years and be able to do something like this. I never would have expected that, back when we first started chatting. So this is really cool to now open up the conversation to everybody.
Yeah, hell yeah. So talk about a little bit about actually the coaching that you do offer, what you're offering currently, because I know you've had some life changes. Like when we first started talking, you were still working as a science teacher. So what exactly are you offering these days? What are the services and also what's next?
Thank you. Yeah, I just quit teaching high school science. So yay, very excited to be done. I love teaching, but it's also really exciting to move into a new chapter. I've been coaching for 11 years. I used to coach youth teams, a collegiate team. Now I mostly coach privately for adults and sometimes kids too. And I do some of the physical coaching and training, like training plans and stuff like that. But most of what I do is actually mindset and mental performance coaching. It's sort of like a climbing therapy sort of deal.
Totally.
I would love to become a licensed therapist eventually. So I don't market it as such, but honestly, that's what it kind of ends up being. It's just talking to people about what they've experienced in climbing, what's been hard for them, and helping them make some moves to feel more comfortable on the wall or in their body, or dealing with some climbing trauma or whatever, it might be. I have lots of curriculum and strategies I've developed to kind of address different problems that people might encounter in their climbing. Whether it's technique or mindset or whatever. So yeah, I offer in-person coaching in St. George, Utah at Contact Climbing Gym when I'm in St. George. I'm on the road quite a bit. I also offer guiding in St. George to a guiding company I've partnered with. So I teach trad climbing and crack climbing and anchor building and all kinds of stuff like that. And I can offer some in-person clinics there as well, doing one-on-one or group mental performance coaching. And then this summer, actually, the first 2 weekends of August, I'll be in Ten Sleep, Wyoming with Bighorn Mountain Guides teaching some sport climbing clinics, which I'm really excited about. I can put more info out there about that if you want.
Yeah, if you give me all that, I will put that in the show notes.
For sure.
And so people don't have to try to remember it if you're driving or whatever right now.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. But a lot of what I do is just virtual. So if you can't get to St. George, Utah, or, Ten Sleep, Wyoming, or whatever, most of what I do is virtual. So how I worked with Emily here, we've just done Zoom calls or phone calls over time. And it's really just on demand, whatever the person needs. I don't like a cookie cutter approach. I'm very individualized with the coaching that I do. So, so it's really custom.
Yeah, the videos that I would send to you and your feedback on them was so helpful. And that was something I remember I was kind of hesitant to do.
I remember talking about that, yeah.
But I think part of this condition that also can show up for any other climber is not perfect proprioception and not a perfect concept of your own size and shape and dimensions. And so watching myself and then also having you comment on it helped me actually get a better understanding of my body. Because we may think we have an image of how we look in our minds. And if you never challenge that, then you're just going to go on thinking that, and it may very well be inaccurate. So you pushed me to do that. I was kind of reluctant to take video and watch it, but I was like, she might be right. My brain might be wrong.
I remember that. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things we've worked on. And, but yeah, I always encourage everybody to film themselves climbing because it is so helpful for that self-analysis, or if you have a coach to analyze it. And to help, just help you realize like, oh, this is what I look like, and be able to visualize success on the climb and see what you're doing on the wall. You start to notice these different patterns in your movement, or maybe some inefficiencies become more apparent. That video feedback is crucial, and I use that a lot also in a context of just like projecting. I always try to have videos on my projects so that I can visualize a bunch, and every time I've sent any of my hardest climbs, it's because the night before and the morning of, I've watched video and I've replayed the moves in my head over and over to the point where it feels like I've climbed it a bunch of times, but I haven't had to actually stress out my body to pull the crux over and over, because I've done it in my head so much that then when I go to send it, it's like I've rehearsed it over and over, which is really powerful when you have a body that's broken easily. I can do a lot of the heavy lifting in my head and then go back and send, which I think has been really instrumental for me. So video feedback is great. If you feel like nervous about taking it because you're worried people will judge you, just blame it on a coach. Be like, oh, my coach is making me take videos like you could do with me, but just lie. Even if you don't have a coach, be like, oh, coach is making me do it. If it makes you feel better, because those videos are so helpful. So like, don't let fear of what other people will think keep you from videoing yourself. It's really great to have that as a resource.
That is such a great idea. What you just said about doing it for a specific climb, because when you and I were working together, it was kind of more general technique, but I have finally, knock on the wood that is around me, gotten to the point where I'm like, having more of a goal instead of just like, my goal is to not injure myself today. I am starting to have goals of sending certain things. And that is such a good idea to have someone video actually pulling the crux and then just watch it over and over and over again before trying to go out and actually get it. I love that.
Yeah. And if it's a climb that's, it's not very visible from the ground, like where a friend might be able to take a video, sometimes if I'm projecting a lot, I'll take my phone up with me in like a zippered pocket or something. And I'll take like in the area I need to remember holds, and I'll do a little phone tour on video, like be like, okay, this is the crimp that my left hand goes on, and then my foot is down there, and I'll like point out the holds and like walk myself through it. So I have that later on to review. And that's helpful for anybody, but especially people like paraclimbers or adaptive climbers, because like I was saying earlier, if I go try that crux a million times, I'm going to hurt myself. But if I only ever have to try it really like once or twice to figure it out, and then I have a video that I can review and I can do it in my head over and over, then, I can usually send the next go after that, after doing all that review, once I come back fresh. That's how I've sent my hardest sport climb, my hardest trad climb, like anything I've projected, basically. It's been so helpful. And I always advocate for people to use that as a tool, because we really don't need to be taking so many attempts a lot of the time. It's like, if we can use video, then that eliminates the need to spend so much time on the wall.
Brilliant. Yes. And do you also, have you ever been able to use it to find things that you didn't realize you were doing? Like, whoa, I thought I was flagging my foot, but it's not. It's just like hanging dead.
Oh yeah, totally. Yes, absolutely. Or like mental things too. Like, oh, I really hesitated there. I'm like spending a long time chalking up there. Or yeah, just like little efficiency things that I've noticed. Some things just become more obvious when you have an outside perspective, like a video. Because it's just like, you're just watching somebody climb. It just happens to be you. So yeah, the video is great for figuring out, honestly, like everything. That's one of my best hacks or tools that I use. And I use with clients a lot too.
I love that. So what's next for Fallon? What can we expect to see on the horizon?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm doing a lot of climbing photography and writing right now, and that's been super rewarding. I've been loving that because I love writing. I love photography. I am on the road for a couple months, and then I have surgery on my ankle. And then I'm thinking about maybe finding like a remote job or something that's compatible with my lifestyle, maybe related to like GIS or science, conservation. I'm not entirely sure yet. It's going to be kind of a pivot out of teaching into something else. But honestly, like coaching and guiding and photography and all the like random climbing adjacent things that I do, for now, that's kind of all I'm doing. And then I'm just going to sort of see what happens and where it goes from here. So yeah, the biggest thing too, I guess, with the writing, I wrote a book a couple years ago, and it's kind of just been sitting in my Google Drive because I've been so busy with teaching and trying to be an athlete and all these other things. And so I would love to like get a literary agent for that so I can find a publisher. So I need to sit down and do another round of revisions and query more agents, and then find a publisher is the big goal. So hopefully that's what's on the horizon for me is that. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Heck yeah. Well, hey, if you need somebody to read your audiobook version, let me know.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, that would be awesome, actually. I know you're the audio queen. So I appreciate that.
And if you ever come to the Gorge, I know it's hot and sticky now, but it will not be hot and sticky forever. You should come here.
I fully plan on it. I really want to come check it out. Once my ankle's all healed up this fall, winter, I'll start to think about my schedule and potential trips and stuff. So I'll definitely let you know, because it's one of the only US crags that's really famous that I haven't been to yet. So
I cannot believe you haven't been here. Crazy.
I know.
Well, let me know. I would say definitely by September, it is not so gross anymore. So, and other people are going to come at me for that. Whatever. I don't mind the heat so much. So I think early September is fine.
Okay. Good to know. I will make it out there. I promise.
See you when you're healed, and come climb in the red.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, this has been so fun. Thank you for having me and chatting with me. I love this, and I'm excited to get to share it with folks too.
You've been listening to Every Body Climbs. I'm your host and adaptive sports journalist, Emily Chen-Newton. To reach out to me about the show, use the Instagram handle EveryBD_Climbs. That's every, then the letter B, the letter D, climbs on Instagram. This is a collaborative podcast presented across Plugtone audio platforms. You can find other episodes in the special series on the Sends and Suffers podcast. Check out this episode's show notes for links to some of the workshops that Fallon is leading this August, that's 2024, as well as links for more information about the health conditions that Fallon and I have and how to climb with them. That's all for now. Climb on, climb strong, and remember, every body climbs.